Hi, I'm Father Dominic, the Bread Monk, author of How to Be a Breadhead, and this is a Breadhead Minute. I know it looks like I've rolled out a snake here, but I'm going to make a beautiful bread called Bambino bread. It's a wonderful gift for a baby shower. I've noticed I've got a little larger piece at the end, a little rounded. I tie an ordinary knot, just like that, and tuck that end under. Then I twist this side into a figure eight with that open end, just like that. And then I pull this through very gently and carefully, and there's the baby's head, and you get a beautiful bambino wrapped in his blankie. Let rise and bake, and you'll have a great gift for a new mother. I'm Father Dominic. Become a breadhead, and you'll be blessed.
This Breadhead Minute made possible by the Home Baking Association. Resources at homebaking.org.
Hi, I'm Father Dominic, the Bread Monk, author of How to Be a Breadhead, and this is a Breadhead Minute. Here's a method to make a braided loaf that's a lot easier than rolling ropes out to the exact same size. I've simply rolled the dough out into a fat oval like this. You could practically pat it out with your hands. Then I take an ordinary pizza cutter and make two parallel cuts in the dough. It's not quite all the way to the top, almost, and then simply braid those strips to get your beautiful braided loaf. Look at that, nothing to it. Tuck the ends under, and you've got a beautiful braid that looks like this coming out of the oven. Or I can take that same braid, put it in a loaf pan, and get a braid top loaf like this. I'm Father Dominic. Become a breadhead, and you'll be blessed.
This Breadhead Minute made possible by the Home Baking Association. Resources at homebaking.org.
Hi, I'm Father Dominic, the Bread Monk, author of How to Be a Breadhead, and this is a Breadhead Minute. One of my favorite tools for bread making is a Danish dough whisk, also called a brotpisker. It really helps to aerate the dough and stir it together very quickly. I like the large size for yeast breads and heavier doughs, and the smaller size for batter breads, which is what I'm going to use right now. I'm going to make cornmeal muffins. I've got stone ground cornmeal in here, as well as some self-rising flour, which already has the baking powder and the salt mixed in. Very convenient. My liquid ingredients comes in here. There's a little sugar in there too. And watch how quickly this batter is going to come together. About 3 times faster than it would if I were using a spoon. I'm Father Dominic, the Bread Monk. Become a breadhead, and you'll be blessed.
This Breadhead Minute made possible by the Home Baking Association. Resources at homebaking.org.
Hi, I'm Father Dominic, the Bread Monk, author of How to Be a Breadhead, and this is a Breadhead Minute. Sometimes in an older cookbook like this one, or in a recipe from your grandmother, you might find a reference to cake yeast or fresh yeast. It comes in a 2-ounce package, and it's usually in the dairy case, but it's increasingly rare to find fresh yeast these days. However, that 2-ounce package is the equivalent of a 3-strip of active dry, so you can kind of do the math like that. Better still is to use the basic rule of thumb with regard to any recipe: 1 package of yeast for every 4 cups of flour. So you look at that old recipe and you see, let's say, 6.5 or 7 cups of flour. You'll know that you're going to need 2 packages of yeast. With this rule of thumb, you can translate pretty much any old recipe. I'm Father Dominic. Become a breadhead, and you'll be blessed.
This Breadhead Minute made possible by the Home Baking Association. Resources at homebaking.org.
Hi, I'm Father Dominic, the Bread Monk, author of How to Be a Breadhead, and this is a Breadhead Minute. If you were learning to make croissant in a real fancy schmancy French pastry school, they'd have you roll the dough out in a rectangle, and you'd be cutting it with a straight edge and trying to get the angles exactly right. If you're making ordinary crescent rolls, you can make that a lot easier. Simply roll your dough out into a circle, and then take an ordinary pizza cutter like this one, cut it in half, cut it in half again, and then into your eighths. Brush a little bit of water in the center so the points will stick. Roll up your roll and make your curves. And you've got a beautifully shaped roll. Do that 7 more times and you'll have beautifully shaped crescent rolls. I'm Father Dominic, the Bread Monk. Become a breadhead and you'll be blessed.
This Breadhead Minute made possible by the Home Baking Association. Resources at homebaking.org.